In part one, we looked at the two main types of cell transport, diffusion and osmosis. In part two, we're going to take a look at other types of transport that are similar to those. Our next type is a kind of diffusion called facilitated diffusion. Now, facilitated diffusion is the movement of substances from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration. So just like diffusion, except that they're going through a transport protein. So again, if you need to pause the video to write down that definition, please do so. The molecules that we talked about in diffusion were very small. Oxygen was only 2 atoms big. Carbon dioxide was only 3 atoms big. But what if we have a much larger molecule, like say glucose? Glucose is a required molecule inside of our cells. That's C6H12O6. What is that? 24 atoms. So they're very big. They can't just go through the cell membrane like oxygen could or carbon dioxide. Here's where those transport proteins come into play. We typically have a higher concentration of glucose on the outside of the cells than inside, because as soon as they get inside, we use them up. So these glucose molecules can go from a high concentration outside of the cell to a lower concentration inside of the cell. But in order to get in, they have to go through that transport protein. Think of it as like a little tunnel. But these tunnels are very specific. So this one only allows for glucose to get in. If we wanted, say, a protein to get in, it would have to go through a different transport protein. Active transport, on the other hand, is just the opposite of facilitated diffusion. This is the movement of substances from areas of low concentration to areas of high concentration. Again, it has to go through a transport protein. So again, pause the video if you need to. Let's jot down a few molecules. Now here's sodium ions. Sodium ions are very small, and you think, well, why can't they just go through the cell membrane? Well, they're positively charged, and so is the outer layers of the cell membrane. They're also positively charged. So as we know, like particles tend to repel one another and they can't pass through. Moving sodium in and out of the cells is a vital function for living organisms, and we'll talk about that why some other time. Here we see a difference where there's a lower concentration outside the cell than inside the cell, and oftentimes we may need to move those sodium ions from that low concentration outside to where it's greater on the inside. And so by active transport, we're able to do that. Now, in order for that to happen, however, it does require energy. This is not a passive type of transport like what we've been talking about. So ATP is going to be used, and it literally pumps these sodium ions into the cell, going from a low concentration to that high concentration. A few other types of cell transport. We have something called endocytosis, which is an intake of large substances into the cell. So like this little green dots that you see on the screen, those might be big molecules that we don't have a specialized protein to get them in like we do for glucose. And so the cell literally can just engulf those molecules, form a vesicle, and bring them inside of the cell. That's what endocytosis means. Endo means in, cyto means cell, osis is a condition. So this is a condition where we take things inside the cell. Just like endocytosis, but just the opposite, is exocytosis. This is the release of large substances from the cell. Our cell's constantly making all kinds of things that is needed somewhere else in the body. So we make these things, they travel to the cell membrane, and then they are released. If you recall, we talked about this when we were looking at the parts of the cell. There's a few other types of transport, but they all revolve around those 6 that we talked about in these 2 videos. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed looking at all these different ways that things get in and out of our cells, because it's truly amazing. And I'll see you in class.